Good morning. Have you ever made a decision and you regretted it? Last night I stayed up way too late chatting with friends, and so I don't know, Bob might be happy because it might slow me down a little bit. But we are here, and you know, the unfoldment of the service is sometimes the things happen, and this is the beauty of life, right? It's a representation that things happen, you pick up, you move forward, you go on. And I love being here. I love seeing your bright faces, and I love this time of year. I just put up my tree, and I probably wouldn't have done that if I hadn't had a 2-year-old in the house. And so it was fun watching him put his first ornament on the tree, and it kind of renewed my Christmas spirit. And so it's been a lot of fun, and I welcome you here during the holiday season. I know it's a busy time of year, so congratulations to you for gifting yourself this gift for your spirit to grow in consciousness and hopefully take something away for you when you're out there amongst all the crazy shoppers. I brought 2 trees. You know, I had purchased these trees when we did the vigil for Karen and Richard, and I left them in my backyard getting sun. But I wanted them to be a representation of new life and love, and a constant reminder that although one soul's passed on, the other one is recovering, and we're so happy about the good news that we hear in regards to Karen. So when the spring comes around, we'll plant them in their honor. And we'll make sure that they're nourished until then. And I don't know, I might put someone up to that job, but I just really like to celebrate life. And one thing's for sure is that we're all traversing the same journey in different ways. Stars, as Mel mentioned, you know, we are the light unto the world. And Bob, you know, helped us with these stars, and they do represent that in the middle of the darkness, even in our dark night of the soul, it is only temporary, but light is always permanent. We can always count on it. It is our true nature and our highest self. So I just wanted to personally thank Bob for the reminder of this, and welcome to those online. And it's such a beautiful representation of the new year. Also, I wanted to thank Jackson for the beautiful music and his guest. What a beautiful song. Thank you. Shane, is it? Did I get that? Yeah, thank you so much. That was really wonderful and perfect. And as Mel said, that Science of Mind book, my minister, when I was at West Valley, gave that to me, and it says February of 1966. And it's such a great thing to read that the same thing was going on in 1966 that's going on now. It reminds us that the journey is ever unfolding, that the information doesn't change, but how we take it in elevates us to higher and new consciousness. So it was so interesting to read what was going on the day of my birth from the perspective of whoever wrote the magazine. And it was very similar to what the talk is about today. But first, I do have a joke. So our joke for today is, Dear Heavenly Father, so far today I've done all right. I haven't gossiped, lost my temper. I haven't been greedy, grumpy, nasty, or self-centered. I'm really happy about that so far. But in a few minutes, I'm going to get out of bed, and I'll need a lot of help. And that's what we're talking about, not getting out of bed, but we are talking about the spiritual journey of self-awareness is not for the faint of heart. And for those of you that are here, you probably know that because you end up in a place like this when you're ready to jump in and diagnose ourselves and our expansion of consciousness and the ways of the things that get in our way of the expansion of consciousness. And so Ernest Holmes says, changing your thinking, changing your life. As we embark on a transformative journey, we use these principles to guide us through actions, empowering us to create a life grounded in love, wisdom, and a deep awareness of our inherent divinity. Spiritual growth often involves the courageous act of examining our behaviors without succumbing to shame. Identifying aspects of selfishness, judgment, materialism, ego-driven actions, and neglect of self-reflection is not a condemnation, but an invitation to authenticity. In acknowledging these patterns in our lives, we lay the foundation for spiritual growth. I can't talk today. Spiritual growth and a heightened consciousness. This is what we're about here. This is what our classes help us do. And one of the things that we have to become really good at is self-awareness. And without it, the journey of spiritual seeking can be quite painful because we're often looking out at the world, trying to change those things instead of going within and trying to look at our negative tendencies. And we have to have a way to do that. And it is through a conscious recognition, an internal transformation, that we navigate a path forward that is authentic, compassionate, and harmonious to our existence. So we all have a desire. We all have a desire to be happy. This is really humanity, right? We want something. It makes us happy. It goes away. We want something. It makes us happy. It goes away. And we have this wheel of desire. And I was talking to Fish on her way up here. We were talking about how to analyze our thoughts to identify these tendencies so that we can get to the root cause of what is preventing us from being happy, or why we think we need to find God or the universe or life or whatever that deity is to you. Because ultimately, we all really want happiness. This is the end journey. It's easy for our mind to understand, but the gap in between of traversing ourselves amongst our relationships with other people can be quite painful sometimes. Sometimes we don't know which way to go. And the spiritual ideation, or what we teach here, teaches you how to look at yourself. So what we're going to talk about today is some of those negative tendencies without shame, without fear. And we're going to talk about the unconscious bias so it's easy for our mind to see the conscious things, right? Like, I know I talk too much. I'm a minister. I talk too much. But what drives that need or desire to be heard or to not listen, or, what root cause is it that might be driving an unconscious behavior that we have that sometimes lives in here, and we don't want to say it out loud because we're kind of afraid that somebody might judge us for it. And if we actually take the time to find a safe place to work it out, often when we let that go, our world expands, our perception changes, and then we see a new collective way of viewing the big picture. So in spiritual philosophies like science of mind, we approach the process gently, understanding that it can be challenging. There's no rush it's just take your time. And as you immerse yourself in the presence of like-minded individuals like us, because we're so wonderful, you immerse yourself in the presence of these folks, and you begin to study these principles. And a subtle but transformation unfolds if you're willing to do the commitment and the work. We move from this fixed mindset to a growth mindset. The unfolding of a more profound understanding of yourself changes the world around you, like Ernest Holmes says. And the journey is not a sprint. It's a gentle, transformative walk towards the authentic expression of your highest self. So when I was driving up here with Fish, we were talking about the root cause of I am not enough and the root cause of I am enough. And so we have the I am enoughers and I am not enoughers, right? We have these two groups of people, or consciousness. And if we truly had the unconscious belief that I'm enough, then the world would appear whole to you. You would not have conflict. You would, compassion would automatically arise because you would see that for yourself. And so what you see for yourself, you automatically see for others. And then we have the root cause, if I am not enough. And this one unconscious belief leads to unconscious behaviors. And those are the ones that we're going to talk about today. And we had a really beautiful conversation about our friendship and how it's blossoming and growing and changing. We're getting older. And it was funny because we both had beliefs. And I said to Fish has been going through some things. And I said, well, what what good are you going to be if you can't carry my suitcase and drive me to Prescott and, go get my coffee when I'm getting ready to talk? And she goes, and we laughed. I was like, it was a joke. And she goes, oh my God, that's what I was afraid of. And I thought, oh, how interesting. I was thinking I was asking too much of her, and she was thinking that if she couldn't do those things, that I wouldn't want to be friends with her anymore. And what we both saw was that both sides of the same paradigm, in a paradoxical way, came from the same root cause: I am not enough. I am not enough for me was I can do these things on my own. I'm a big girl. I work. I have a family. I can get here by myself. And it's nice to have company, but I can do it and still maintain my friendship. And I could get this idea or thought out of my mind that I have something to prove. And on the same parallel, we had this idea. So as friends, we came together, and it was a genuine, authentic moment of meeting I am not enough. And what came out of it was a sense of intimacy between two friends, to share the things that they were afraid of and bring them out into the light of the day and see that they made no sense. Because if you're working from I am enough, it doesn't matter. You see the world as whole. And so we were able to let go of ideas. So it brings me to the talk today. We are talking about the unconscious behaviors, and the opposite of that is conscious affirming alternatives, right? And so the first one is judgment and criticism. Judgment and criticism isn't something that we walk around going, I'm judging you. Usually it's something in our mind, and it prevents authenticity between two people. It creates a space of unawareness. It's an automatic negative evaluation, often based on preconceived notions. And the impact to our relationship, to our world, to the greater cause, it creates a negative atmosphere, and it damages your self-esteem. And it can damage the self-esteem of others, although we're not really responsible for others. But we often, another belief from the core of I am not enough is, why don't people like me? That's a really hard one to face if people don't want to hang out with you or they don't want to include you. Now, it's a kind of tricky paradox, right? Because we want you to have confidence, and if we pay attention to what feels good and we pay attention to the vibration, then we know that when we enter a circle, if it's not for us, we can walk away. Because if you're enough, you walk away without judgment. If you're operating from I'm not enough, you will spend time there trying to make them like you. Have you ever experienced that with anybody where they kind of hang out and they really, really are working hard for you to like them? And it's an unconscious bias and belief. And so these are the things with judgment and criticism that come up when you start to look at that unconscious bias of judgment and criticism. And one of the ways I've come to look at judgment is judgment comes up for me when I think I'm better than someone and I have a better idea and your idea isn't good enough, versus an opinion or a collaboration, right? So there's a lot of ways to demonstrate this. But the positive alternative is to cultivate empathy within yourself, understanding, promoting, and supportive and an uplifting environment. So I am enough always is collaborative. It always is supportive. It is always loving, because you're giving that to yourself. So how can it not emanate from you in a magnificent, magnetic way? The second one is selfishness and greed. The unconscious behavior of selfishness and greed is a habitual disregard for others' needs, driven by self-centered focus. Now, I don't know about you, maybe this is not you and you've never done these things, but I have lived 58 years, so I know when I was looking at this talk, I was like, how do you talk about this without shame? It's just how we were brought up. It's the unconscious mechanism of I am not enough. It is not a purposeful action. I truly believe that everybody is doing the best they can where they're at, from what they believe, and the bias that they have. And they're moving and breathing from that space, and they're also cultivating relationships from that space. So as we grow and we go to the store and we see people with different personalities, it enables us, when we're standing in I'm enough, to see the world not through our perception, but through a perspective that they may be operating from that belief as well. And then compassion arises naturally. It arises naturally. And then the judgment falls away. And then the selfishness and greed that can sometimes come up from, again, from the root cause. These things, as we start to study and we start to introspect and we start to look, the positive alternative always shows itself because it is who you naturally are. You are the light of the world. You are the spark of the soul. And how we've learned to move and breathe and be in the world has just come from this deep-rooted core belief that I am not enough. Now, the mind takes that and runs away with it and says, I don't know what you're talking about, Tracey. I'm enough. And I would say that too. But we can tell, right, always what our belief system is by the world that we've demonstrated. And if we are not happy, we are probably operating from a core belief of one of these 5 things that we're going to go over today. And it takes a great deal of compassion and self-love to look at it and to work it out with someone who has traversed the journey a little bit longer or farther than you, right? A teacher, a practitioner, a minister, and I've had to go through this with my teacher, and he has never called me out in the form of these words, but he has helped me to see when I'm operating from I am not enough and how that corresponds to me seeing the world through these lenses. Because when you don't think you're enough, then you see the world is not enough, and you become a victim, and then a victim, everyone's doing everything to you. Whereas if you're in the I'm enough-ers, the world is whole, the birds are singing, the rainbows are shining, but there's still the world going on. And again, it gives you that perspective, it gives you a new perspective about yourself and others. The third one that we're going to talk about today is materialistic pursuits. The unconscious bias with this is seeking constant acquisition as a means of validation or security. I was putting up Christmas decorations, and I had to move all of my malas around. I have like 150 malas. And I love these, but I also know that when I buy them, it makes me feel good because they're beautiful. And it gives me a sense of well-being until I see another one that's more beautiful, and I want that one too. And so, right, I go again trying to fill up I'm not enough to I'm enough by buying a thing, right? And so what we start to understand if we ask why do I need this? And we follow that thought. It doesn't come to you as I'm not enough. I buy malas because I'm not enough. No, we don't. It doesn't work that way. But it is the operating system that has us really driven into a materialistic world. And the impact is a superficial fulfillment. And it's often leading to distraction or dissatisfaction, which pulls you away from your star, away from your center, away from your true self. For eons, lifetimes, you have been going out. And remember, we talked about attachment is attention to the world. And so materialism drives our attention into the world. Now, it is not a horrible thing to have nice things, malas, and these things. If the world has provided you with the ability to buy them, you can easily give them up. You can tell how quickly you are attached to something by when it's lost, right? Have you ever lost something and you're like, oh my God. I remember I lost my first mala and I came unglued. We left it on the car in Lake Havasu. My husband put it on top of the car. We were driving away. And I didn't say to myself, oh, that's too bad. That was a beautiful mala. It's gone. No, I said to my husband, why did you leave the mala on top of the car? And out comes the behavior of the unconscious bias. And I was like, ooh, I'm attached to that. The next trip, my husband, we had this beautiful wagon. We pulled Luke around in it. We packed all my stuff because I don't know how to pack for one night. And we're putting everything in, and we're running late, and we drive away. And I do the talk, we're driving home. And Bill goes, is the wagon in the back of the truck? And I'm like, I don't know, I'm sitting in the front of the truck with you. And he goes, I'm gonna stop. And I go, I'm sure it's back there. It wasn't. We left it in the parking lot of the hotel. And he loves that wagon. And we went all over looking for this wagon, and no wagon was as good enough as that wagon that we left in the parking lot. And we did ultimately find one, and every time we pull it, it's like, this isn't our old wagon. Like, no. No, it's not. It's a new one, and it's a new day. And so really, it's so hard to release the things that we love so much. But one of the things that my teacher, Tom, told me, and what I have to say about what he told me is, Tracey, if you want to buy a mala, buy one every now and then. But look at the reason you're buying them, and what is it fulfilling in you that the star, yourself, your higher self, already is. We don't truthfully need anything added unto us or taken away. You are enough just as you are, because you are the isness of the world. We don't really need teachers or books or anything. You already are that which you seek. But because we have this human side of us and we have these experiences, and depending on the experiences that you have gravitated to through your belief system, sometimes we run into people that make us feel a certain way. And what that feeling is supposed to do is show us that we're operating from some of these unconscious behaviors, and that we are not in the I am enougher group. Right? And so as we unfold these, as they become clear to us, we don't turn away from them, we embrace them. We bring them back to the heart, and we transform them, and then we move automatically to the positive alternative of the unconscious behavior. So ego-driven behaviors, unconscious behavior, is reacting defensively to protect a self-image and at the expense of a harmonious interaction. Now, I know none of you have ever done that, right? You've never defended or reacted or, but I have. I'll be the first to admit, I can defend Tracey with, I got my iron staff and my shield, and you cannot, tell me anything. And as that starts to break down, what happens is it strains our relationship. It hinders collaboration. And the paradox of that, is it's not asking you to become a doormat, because doormat is still from I'm not enough. The wholeness is collaboration isn't something you do. It's something that naturally arises when you start to transform the belief I am not enough, and you start to realize that you are enough, because your true nature is always enough, and it needs nothing added or nothing taken away. So to the mind, when it gets a hold of these things, it's like, yeah, well, but what about my boss that yelled at me yesterday? Or what about my mom who never listens to me or understands? Or, what about this? Or what about that? And you recognize that it's the mind, and you're still in the unconscious bias because you're still acting, right? You're still moving. You're still wanting to change the world instead of coming back home, unveiling the unconscious behavior and allowing the affirmative of that to naturally flow from you through the healing of your own story, right? So I get very stuck there sometimes. I recognized recently that love to me was being nice and helpful. And at the same time, it made me kind of a pushover. And it was really hard for me to stand up for myself. The wholeness category, the I am enough category, is a belief. It's not a belief. It's a beingness. The I am not enough is a belief. And from that disbelief, if you're still working in it, those ideas are still coming to the surface. And what it's telling you without shame is there's still some more work to do. So if we're going out and we're trying to make these things happen, then we're still working from that belief. And if we are moving those things through us and allowing our unconsciousness to fold, we become them. And there's no question of how to move, because consciousness always knows what is needed. It is the flow of the everlasting life. It is your true nature. It is beyond your mind. So the last one, neglecting self-reflection. The unconscious behavior is avoiding introspection as a defense mechanism to evade uncomfortable truths about you, about your life, about how we do things. And it can be very painful. The impact is stagnation in personal development and missed opportunities for growth. The positive alternative of this is embrace self-reflection and introspection, promoting a continuous learning and inner growth, an expansion of your consciousness, moving from I am not enough belief to I am enough beingness, and then watch how your perspective of the world changes. And the natural arising of that is compassion. Because the only thing that keeps us, we can be compassionate, but sometimes it feels inauthentic because we're trying to be compassionate instead of allowing it to arise from the wholeness of your beingness, from the magnitude and the magnetism of your higher self, which always bleeds through when we drop the story of you. Our goal here is to help you transcend the lower self and to recognize that you already are the higher self. It is like a lion that thinks it's a lamb. How can you tell anyone that the lion, you see this lion and you're like, hey man, you're a lamb. Like, I'm sorry, you're a lion. And it thinks it's a lamb and you're like, dude, you're a lion. Like, you're a lion. And the lamb is like, I've got that backwards, don't I? The lion and the lamb is a representation of the lion. I have that in my head. I'm not giving it to you correctly. But if I walked up to the lion and said, hey, you're not a lamb, you're a lion. Go be a lion. Roar, make some noise, move, come on, let's go. The lamb, part of the lion, would be like, no, I'm not. I'm a lamb. And we see the lion. So when we see great teachers, great beliefs, great philosophies, great religions, they see you as the lion. And the story, the philosophy is trying to get you to move from the story of you, the belief of you, the lamb, into the wholeness of the lion. It is a representation. I hit this, right? It is a representation of dropping the story, the false identity, and letting the pure, beautiful you shine through. And when you work on that, these things transform. The wholeness comes through. You have more harmonious life, more harmonious relationships. You see the world better. You become of service. Community grows. And this is a happy, loving place that vibrates energy out into the world, and people always want to be around that, right? Yes. So by addressing these behaviors, adopting positive alternatives, individuals contribute not only to their own well-being, but also to the creation of more harmonious and compassionate community. And that's what I think life is unfolding for us. And I really appreciate you allowing me to share that with you. And your week, just stop and pause. And when a thought arises, just explore it. Call a friend. We're here for you. We love you. Namaste.